So I go by PJ. My Chinese name is Peijing, Peiyang的Pei, Jing的Jing. And it was given to me by my father with the, interestingly enough, with the intent of, along the Buddhist lines of cultivating purity. But I joke that it was a good thing that my parents landed on this name because the alternative name they were thinking of was Yao Han, which for the older generation of you, you know that that's the name of an old supermarket chain in Singapore, right? So that would have been quite disastrous for my childhood. So my name is Peijing, right? And what I wrote in the biography is actually factually correct. I really did discover Zen Buddhism when I was procrastinating for my A-levels. And I discovered Ajahn Chah when I was in the university library, really procrastinating on my homework. And I was like, okay, yeah, I did this meditation course. Let me go and read up about let me do something instead of my homework. And coincidentally, I came across the book A Still Forest Pool, talking about Ajahn Chah. And I thought that this was a very, very funny monk, right? Because one of the stories that was inside there was of this Western monk that went to Ajahn Chah, sought his leave, went to another teacher, left that teacher, went to a third teacher, left the teacher, came back to Ajahn Chah, and then he did the same thing again. He just kept wandering from teacher to teacher. At which point, Ajahn Chah then told him, "You're like a man with dog shit in your bag and you think everywhere smells bad." So when I read that, I was like, wow, this is the kind of teaching that I think is it's very direct to the point and it's very, very funny as well. And that actually led me to Ajahn Brahm. Because fast forward, after I started work in my current workplace, I was actually in Guangming San for some other course, and I came across this Finding Happiness in Life. Is one of the free VCDs that are available actually, and I thought, oh, okay, this guy is a disciple of Ajahn Chah. Let me listen to him. And I made the mistake of listening to Ajahn Brahm the very first time when I was driving a car, and I put the disc into my parents' car. And I still vividly remembered that halfway through, I actually had to pull aside because I was laughing so hard, I actually almost got into an accident. Right? He was telling jokes like, what pleasure does a monk have? And then he said that it's none. And he was jokingly saying that it's N-U-N, right? Which is not really an appropriate joke for monastics, by the way. Yeah, so he went along that lines, and I was like, oh, okay, this guy is quite interesting. Attended my first talk organized by BF back then, and I thought, okay, this guy is quite interesting as well. And he's quite funny. And then that executive retreat, which I mentioned in the biography, right? And that's the reason why I'll always agree to any request by BF for me to speak, because I'm eternally grateful for having organized that chance for me to meet a great teacher like Ajahn Brahm. So during that retreat, I went there as a fake Buddhist. So I didn't keep any of the 5 precepts. I was drinking a lot of alcohol back then. I just started a very stressful job. And I still remember vividly that on the way to Chiang Rai from Chiang Mai, we passed by this advertisement for Chang beer. And, the thing is that when I came to the BF office to sign the terms and conditions for the retreat, right, BF has a lot of lawyers, right? So the terms and conditions had all these things like, oh, we reserve the right to kick you out of the retreat if you don't follow the rules and all that stuff. And I was thinking to myself, crap, I signed that disclaimer so I can't break the 5 precepts by buying beer, but I really need a drink right now. Right? Fast forward 10 days later, right, I passed by actually another beer advertisement, and there was zero inclination to drink whatsoever. And then I was like, what's going on? And then I realized, and I was reflecting to myself, that actually there was this whole conditioning that, oh, beer is cool, right? It's very, very attractive and so forth, right? And what actually also happened was what happened during the retreat itself. A bit of context is that the very first retreat I ever attended was in 2005 when I went to Dharamshala, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama is, and I did a Vipassana retreat there. So for those of you who have been there, you'll know what I'm talking about. 90% of my fellow retreatants were Israelis. So during the evening Goenka talk, the subtitles in the video in Dharamshala is all in Hebrew because most of the retreatants are from the Israeli army veterans. And it was very, very rigorous, as those of you who have been through that realize, right? So in the morning at 4:30 in the morning, I vividly remember there's one time that I got up and the guy was like, ringing the bell. So I got up. I said, okay. I waved my hand at him. Then I lay back into bed. And immediately he started ringing the bell in my face, right? Like, dong, 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 like something like this, right? In my face until I got up and I got out of bed. I was like, okay, I'll do that. So when I signed up for the executive retreat in 2010, I thought that given the terms and conditions, we reserve the right to kick you out. I thought that it would be a similar thing. And to my very great and pleasant surprise, when I arrived at Chiang Rai and that evening talk, and Ajahn Brahm said, for those of you who have sleepiness in your meditation, I have a perfect remedy for you. It's called the bed. And then he said, for those of you, and he told the story of this lady who in Sydney who went for a retreat, and she was like very, very tired. So he told her, just go and sleep as much as you can. And he talked about how, like Brother Joe here should go and sleep also. Yeah, should sleep more. And he said that this lady was sleeping, at the very start. And towards the end, she became the star retreatant because she very quickly caught up. So I thought, oh wow, this is awesome. This is very cool. And it was in a 5-star hotel, right? So the beds are very comfortable. Chiang Rai is a very quiet place. And then the spa, this was like the former BF president. Angie is very good at negotiating deals. So there were like spa treatment discounts, and I was like, wow, this is like Singapore spa prices, but in a 5-star hotel. So yeah, every evening I went straight to the spa center, and then I booked myself for 3 consecutive days of spa treatments in the afternoon, and I slept. So the first few days of the retreat, I slept 14 hours a day. I'm not making this up. It was 12 hours at night, so I missed every single morning meditation. Right, I didn't go for any of them. And then every afternoon, after the spa treatment, you feel so nice, so relaxed. You go and sleep another 2 hours. So every day is 14 hours and non-stop. And the interesting thing that happened is that towards the end of the free and easy part, so a bit of context also is that the executive retreats has got the free and easy part, then there's the serious, silent, only one meal, no eating after lunch kind of retreat. At the end of the first half of the retreat, the stillness that I experienced, right, was far greater than the stillness I ever experienced, whether through my personal meditation or even after I'd been through the Vipassana retreat in the Goenka tradition. Right, after the Goenka tradition, I could easily sit for 1-2 hours. But I reflected on the quality of the stillness that I experienced, and I realized very quickly, this was way deeper. It was way more still. It was way more pleasurable. There was no force. There was no directing on the mind. The mind just very naturally gravitated to the breath. I sit down and then I just watch the breath. And it was a very strange thing that I had never experienced before. Like watching the breath was like watching TV. It's like watching Netflix and you're just like there and then you're like, oh. But this one you're actually fully awake and you're just watching every single rise and fall. So I thought, wow, this is something interesting. It's really quite different from what I ever experienced. And then it got weirder. Because I was reading the book Happiness Through Meditation because I had nothing to do. So I was like, okay, I'll buy the book and I just read it anyway. And in that book, and also in Ajahn's talks, he was talking about this thing called the nimittas, right, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. And he talks about these lights that appear in your mind when your mind is still enough. So me being a very skeptical public servant, I was like, it wouldn't happen to me one. It's my very first retreat. I was drinking alcohol like a fish, way before the retreat. I don't keep my precepts, so how the hell could this happen to me, right? And I still vividly remember that the first time that it happened, right, I was in the Dhamma hall in the afternoon. So this was one of those days where I was actually not going to the spa. I think because the spa was booked or something like that. And I was just meditating there, very nice, very peaceful. All of a sudden, I had this perception of light. I thought that somebody had suddenly shone a torch into my face. Like the light just appeared out of the blue when I was watching the breath. And I was so surprised by it, I actually came out of it after meditation. I opened my eyes, and the whole hall was still dim. And I was like, oh, what's this? This is interesting. This is what he was talking about. I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Okay. So I actually asked the question in the Q&A, so what do you do when the light appears? And Ajahn was like, that's a wrong question to ask, right? What got you there was that you did nothing, so continue doing nothing, right? Let your mind decide whether it wants to watch the breath or whether it wants to watch this light. You will know what to do. And that was exactly what happened, where I just then, proceeded to just enjoy the stillness, the peace, the calmness. The light appears sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it becomes fluctuating and all that. That's perfectly fine. And it became actually more stable if you didn't go and look for it. And it became brighter and brighter. And again, like what Ajahn was describing, which I didn't think would happen, he was talking about how in some very, very, when you shine so this light is actually what you call the chitta nimitta. It's the sign of the mind. It's actually not the mind, it's a reflection of your mind. When the chitta nimitta becomes more and more still, it becomes more and more powerful and more bright. And that's exactly what happened. And Ajahn was saying that at one point in time, you will think to yourself, I'm going to go blind. But don't worry, you won't go blind because it's not a physical sight thing. It's actually a perception of your mind. And you might think to yourself, I can't take any more of this like bliss and joy. But don't worry, you can because it's a factor of the mind, right? And that was exactly what happened. Where the thing became brighter and brighter. At one point in time, it felt as though that I was staring into the noon sun. It was so bright and so intense that I felt I was just going to go I was just going to explode, right? But that didn't happen. I mean, I still came down to earth. And using my sleep as a gauge, right? The other interesting thing that happened was that my sleep very naturally became less as well. I didn't set an alarm because I was sharing a room with somebody else, Dr. Lee Ching Chuan. I'm not sure if he's here today. So Dr. Lee was in the room. I didn't want to disturb him, so I purposely didn't set an alarm. And I was using the mental trick of I go to bed and I'll just tell myself what time to wake up, right? And admittedly, the first few days when I was sleeping 14 hours, I always missed that because my mind was not the mind wasn't awake at that point in time. When my breath became more still, right, and I was watching the breath very naturally, the sleep went very naturally from 12 hours a night to about 8 hours without any adjustment whatsoever. When the nimitta started appearing, I was sleeping 4, very naturally. In fact, there was one evening I vividly remember that after the evening Q&A, which ended about 9:30 or so, it felt good. You know, sometimes in a retreat, you know that your mind is all ready to go further, right? So I sat and I meditated some more, and again, very quickly, the nimitta came up. It was very bright, very intense, and I was just blissed out, right? Then after about 10:30 thereabouts, I went back to the room to sleep, right? Brushed teeth, went down, lie down, and I just lay in bed. And I couldn't sleep. I was wide awake. But it's not the restlessness that you feel when you sometimes you don't sleep well and you wake up in the middle of the night, right? Actually, there's a little bit of residual restlessness there. This one, my mind was completely still. So the whole time I was lying in bed, right, I was basically meditating because I was just watching. The only thing I was moving was my breath. So that was the only thing I was coming up and going down, coming up and going down. And it went on like that for quite a while. Then when I next looked at the clock, it was 12 o'clock. And I was okay, I think I should really go to bed now, right? So I went back and lay down. At 4 o'clock, I naturally woke up. So the next few days, I was sleeping very much just from 12 to 4, repeatedly. And then it got even weirder, where there was one time when there was this was the second last day, when the nimitta came out, very bright, very intense, all the bliss, all the joy. When all of a sudden there was a dim, it felt like someone dimmed the light switch. It went like the THX, in the cinemas, and then the light went down. And it was accompanied by this sensation of a complete letting go, and I felt as though that I was falling into myself, falling. And then suddenly there was an explosion of bliss. The only way I can describe it is to describe it as that it felt as though that I had taken all my life's orgasms, right, and compressed it into one moment, and I multiplied it by 1,000,000 times. It was way out of this world. It was way better than anything I ever experienced in the five sense world. And I was so blown by this that the defilement of excitement came about, and so I came straight out of the meditation as a result of that. And that is what Ajahn Brahm calls the yo-yo jhanas. They're not really a real jhana. It's because if you actually get into the first jhana and you are truly stable, right, then actually the bliss can last you for an hour, 2 hours very easily. You will not actually get out of it. But because this was the very first time I ever experienced anything like this, right, I was just so mind blown. It's literally the best bliss I ever experienced in my life. And I just came straight out of it. The excitement drove me out of the state. And that is called a yo-yo jhana because you go in and you bounce straight out. And that was 8 years ago. after that, right, two immediate things that came out of that yo-yo jhana experience. The first one was it affirmed my faith. I was like, wow, this teacher actually really knows what he's talking about. Right? Whatever he has said so far, right, whatever he has described in his book, whatever he said in his talks, has panned out exactly like as per my experience without any intention on my part. I didn't expect to like go into those deep states because just prior to the retreat, I was just like, oh, okay, beer, let's go for drinks and all that stuff, right? And all of a sudden, this happened. It just blew my mind. The second thing that it made me realize is that it made sense now why Buddhist monks were celibate. And I immediately thought to myself, no wonder they're celibate. They've got so much more joy and so much more happiness. And interestingly enough, later on when I started reading through the whole of the Majjhima Nikaya, there's actually a sutta where the Buddha talks about the peak of feeling, right, Vedana, which is really more like the peak of experience. And he talks about the jhanas as that peak of experience that you ever experience. And he also talks about how that with the jhanas, right, that the monks actually have a higher pleasure than the common practice of sexual intercourse. That's exactly what the Buddha actually said. And it's quite funny because that was like what the Buddha said, but I didn't think about it. I didn't realize that I experienced it myself, and then now I realize that actually monks, if they practice well, they actually get into the deep samadhi, right? They don't need any of this. That's actually my personal realization. So that was that affirmed my belief that actually this is the right direction. And throughout the whole retreat, Ajahn Brahm kept talking about like the suttas this, suttas that, and so on and so forth, right? And coincidentally, on the flight back, I happened to be sitting next to him on the very same flight, coincidentally. So I asked him for advice, which I'm eternally grateful. I asked him, like, is there any translations that you would recommend of the middle length sayings or the Majjhima Nikaya? And he said that, actually they're very good translations by Bhikkhu Bodhi. The only thing that he would add on is actually to accompany that with his sutta classes that he posts on the internet and the BSWA. And shortly after that stuck in my head. Shortly after that, then I was posted to India for 3 years as part of my work. And there is a very big lack of good Dharma teachers in India, which was a good thing because then I was just downloading all the sutta talks by Ajahn Brahm. I had plenty of time to kill anyway, so every Sunday I would just read and I would just listen to like both Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Brahmali. And I'm very grateful to him for having made that recommendation because Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahmali, and they as well as Ajahn Sujato and this other monk called Venerable Analayo, they are at the forefront, right? It's only now in this century, in this time, right, that we are actually pulling out the Chinese agamas, the Ahanjing, and doing a comparison with the Pali canon. It's only now that this is really happening. Earlier on, the Japanese scholars were doing that in the turn of the 20th century and all that, but at that point in time, it's not as pervasive. You couldn't go online, right? But it's only now that these monks are actually doing that comparison. They're doing the comparison to Vinaya. And with Venerable Analayo, whom I would say that he's actually another big influence on me. He is another genius monk who speaks like 10 languages. His books are incredibly hard to read because his footnotes are in German, Italian, and then he'll quote the Pali, he'll quote the Sanskrit, he'll quote the Tibetan, Khotanese, and so on and so forth. He speaks like 10 languages. So his footnotes are very dense. But I've actually compared what he has translated into English, right, with the Chinese originals, and I actually find his translations to be actually very, very accurate. So it's only now that all this is coming out, and Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahmali, Ajahn Sujato have been very, very active in pulling this research by Venerable Analayo, the analysis of the Majjhima Nikaya, comparing it with the Chinese parallels into their sutta classes and their sutta teachings. The other thing that I found very inspirational was the fact that the way that Ajahn Brahm learned Pali is very different from the traditional Pali, the way that it is taught and learned. Most monastics, when they learn Pali, they learn it from the suttas, right? And the Pali in the suttas is different from the Pali in the Vinaya, which is again different from the Pali in the verses, the Gathas and all that, in some of the Samyutta Nikayas and all that. The best approximate difference I can share is actually that if you think about Chinese, right, there's spoken Chinese today, like Baihua as we speak it, right? But then there's the old Baihua, right, the old spoken Chinese, right, which you see in the novels like Hong Lou Meng, you know, COG and all that stuff, right. And then you have the even older, very archaic, very formula kind of Chinese in the poems, right. And each of these are actually quite different, even though it's the same language, right. And that's the parallel for Pali. And the Vinaya Pali is actually very vernacular. People use it like the Pali actually is it's like everyday language. And Ajahn Brahm actually was tasked by Ajahn Chah to translate that for the monks. So he actually grappled with the Pali by actually understanding how is it used in everyday life first. Before then, he applied it to like understanding actually reading the suttas by himself, which I think lends a very different angle where he approaches the language. As a result of which then he realizes, and I think that he brings a very different flavor from what Bhikkhu Bodhi has in the book. So for those of you who are really keen on that kind of like in-depth study, I strongly recommend downloading the BSWA talks and actually going through the Majjhima Nikaya with those as your reference and your guide, and read for yourself and see for yourself. Yeah. So anyway, that's enough about me. The reason why I wanted to talk about this biography thing, right, is actually that for me, this actually, the experience I had, right, and the experiences I've had since with Ajahn Brahm in my retreats, illustrates actually the most common misconception that we have of the Eightfold Path, which are the two factors of Sammasankappa, commonly mistranslated as right intention, and I'll explain why in a bit, and Samavayama, which is, you know, mistranslated also as like right effort, right? And with these two, right, I think that what often happens is that you'll see in a little bit, like people often misunderstand that, and they apply that wrongly to their practice. And let me just explain, you know, I'll just give a brief overview, if this works. Yeah, okay, so this is actually not like fully accurate. I'll just quote from this excerpt. It's actually a translation of Majjhima Nikaya 149, right? But this is the Chinese parallel translated by Venerable Analayo. So this is actually talking about like how to see things as they truly are, right? And you know, let me just read out. Experiencing within what is painful, what's pleasant, or what is neutral, one knows and sees as it really is. Because of knowing and seeing as it really is, one is not defiled by attachment to the mind, to mental objects, mind consciousness, mental contact, and to the feelings or experiences that arise because of the mental contact, which are painful, pleasant, or neutral, right? So this phrase of like seeing things as they really are, right, in the suttas, right, actually means like actually you are fully enlightened, right? You're basically, there's no defilements left. You can actually see things as they truly are. In much the same way that you see things, right, as they truly are, right, without any filters. There's no sunglasses in your eyes, right? You see the colors and the colors are as it is. So that's actually what it really means. And if you look at the next red box, right, this I found this interesting because it's the only place in the whole Pali canon, whether in Chinese, in the suttas, right, whether is it in the Chinese or in the Pali, where you actually see that what you see right motivation, right, or Sammasankappa, right next to Samavayama. And there's nothing about the intermittent parts of the Eightfold Path. Right? And the reason is because one who knows and sees in this way is reckoned to be bringing to fulfillment through cultivation, right view, right motivation, right endeavour, right mindfulness, and right samadhi. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood are said to have been earlier purified and brought to fulfillment through cultivation. What this means then to me when I read this was that, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It means then actually that when you talk about cultivating the Eightfold Path, right, actually things like right speech, right action, right livelihood is what you do every day. You know, you have to do that every day in your practice because you have to talk, you have to work, right? So that's something that you should be doing in your practice, you know, in your everyday practice, in your everyday life. But when you sit and you meditate, right, when you try to go deeper, you know, you're practicing to actually like attain like Nibbana, whether is it through Nirodha Samapatti, where it's that very, very, very deep state where of meditation, you come out of that, you're either a non-returner or you're fully enlightened. So that's very, very deep. If any of you get that state, please let me know and you can teach me, right? So how to get there, yeah. But when you're trying to attain that, right, if you look here, there's right view, right? But right view is only perfected when you become a stream winner. Then the next steps, right, actually are right motivation and right endeavour. right? It's actually not right mindfulness first. It's not right samadhi first. It's actually what you start off with the motivation, what's the endeavor. So actually, if I move on to the next slide, right, why is it that Ajahn Brahm translated Sama Sankappa as right motivation instead of right intention, right? Intention actually talks about outcome. So if you are familiar with the army, right, which I'm guessing most of the guys here, if you're Singaporean, you probably have understood that. There's this thing called the mission, right? And in the US Army, they translate that actually as the commander's intent. So the context in a military setting is that the commander will say, okay, our intent is that we want to go in this direction and get this particular objective. So if you think about it, intention, right, intent already has a stated outcome involved already. It's actually not talking about the starting point. But Sama Sankappa, if you look at what the details of it, as we'll cover in a little bit, actually talks about the starting point. It's not talking about like where you're going. It's actually talking about where you're starting from, right? So that's why Ajahn Brahm actually then said that maybe right intention is a little bit of a misnomer. Maybe right motivation is a better translation. Now, Sama Vayama is often translated as effort, and there is a certain connotation to that, right? Right, Sama Vayama actually talks about like what is it that you are doing, right? But if you read the text also, the elaboration in the text, right, actually talks about what are the outcomes that you are attempting to get, actually. So you're attempting actually to purify your mind, actually attempting to get like wholesome mental states, and you're attempting to reduce like unwholesome mental states. That's actually what Sama Vayama is about, the four aspects of it. Effort, right, unfortunately the word actually implies a certain element of willpower, and that's actually where a lot of like wrong action and wrong results happen as a result of that. Whereas endeavor is probably a better translation because you're talking about like what is it that you are taking, right, to actually attempt to get to that outcome. It might be through willpower, it might not, right, which we'll cover in a little bit. So it's often overlooked, and these two are often overlooked and misunderstood, right? So people always talk about, oh, good intentions, we're the best of intentions, right? So that should be like good karma. But that's not right intention, right? And then when people say about like, oh, you right effort, that means that we have to sit more, you have to do more. But that's not actually what right effort is, right? So we'll cover that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about what is wrong motivation. So this is a translation, it's actually one of the latest translations, it's actually from Ajahn Brahm's translation of this work called The Word of the Buddha. And he basically, this monk called Nyana Tiloka Thera, at the turn of the century, took excerpts from the Pali Canon and put it under the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And it's literally 100 years old work, right? So you read the original, it says like Lord, for example, and it's like very, very old school. So Ajahn Brahm has changed that a fair bit. And this is the latest translation that he has. So what are unwholesome motivations? They are the motivation of sensual desire, and of ill will and of cruelty. Just a slight note here that when you talk about sensual desire, right, it does not mean sex alone. Sensual desire refers to anything, right, to do with the five sense world. And it does not refer to the sixth sense. So it does not refer to the pleasures of the jhanas, which is a purely mental thing. So this is really just to clarify, right? So what are unwholesome intentions? They are motivation of like sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty. Where do they originate from? Perceptions of sensual desire, ill will, and of cruelty. And where do they cease without remainder? Their cessation is stated. Here, quite secluded from the five senses, secluded from unwholesome states, a bhikkhu or a meditator enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by the movement of the mind and the holding of the mind on the meditation object, which is rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So this is a very different translation from Bhikkhu Bodhi or any other translation you have read out there, because most often what people will say, the translation will say that is accompanied by thinking. Vitaka Vichara is translated as like thinking, right? But in reality, the Chinese parallel uses a different character. They use jue instead of xun for Vitaka in this case, right? And jue is actually associated with the jhana states in the Chinese agamas actually. So this is actually referring to a non-verbal. You're not thinking in the first jhana already. actually you've gone way past that already. There's no thought already. Way, way, way behind. But what actually happens in that jhana state, like the yo-yo jhana I mentioned as an example, your mind is drawn to that, and when there is, it's there for a moment, right, and then it will actually move back. And it will just fluctuate back and forth, right? In the same way that when you're watching TV, it's not a constant, right? You'll be drawn to it, then when the advertisement comes out, you'll go back a little bit, right? And it's analogous to that. So that's actually what happens here. So it's in the first jhana, right, that unwholesome intentions, right, motivations, right, actually cease without remainder. And how do you practice, right, to cease unwholesome motivations? And this is where right effort, the right endeavor comes out, right? Here, a bhikkhu awakens zeal for the non-arising of unarisen unwholesome states. So the unwholesome states that haven't arisen, you don't want that to happen, right? For the abandoning of arisen unwholesome states, you got anger, you let it go, abandon it, right? For the arising of unarisen wholesome states, you've not gotten nimittas or jhanas yet, carry on, right? Work towards it, right? And then for those that have arisen already, you protect it. You try to allow, okay, so what are the conditions that allow this to arise in the first place? How can I protect the conditions to allow this to persist? So write the endeavor. So this is actually talking about wrong motivation. Right motivation. What are wholesome motivations? They are the intention of renunciation, nekama, or of letting go, letting peace. So Ajahn Brahm uses the word make peace, right? It's actually a form of renunciation, right? Of non-ill will, avaya-pada, which is often translated as loving kindness, but actually it goes beyond that, right? It's actually just saying that you don't have that ill will, and you don't have the cruelty, which is ahimsa or avihimsa in the Pali. And these originate from the perceptions of letting go, of non-ill will, of non-cruelty. So this is just a short blurb. It ceases in the second jhana. I'll circulate the slides later so you all can read it by yourself. And how do you practice to actually allow even this motivation to cease, right? And this will cease actually in the second jhana when there's no will whatsoever, right? So the four jhanas are characterized by disappearance of things. First jhana, why is it there's that bliss that I experienced in the yo-yo jhana? It was because there is the disappearance of the five senses. The second jhana, you get into a very deep state of stillness, right? It's because there's no will. The will, right, the volition, right, even of wholesome motivations, right, will have completely disappeared by then. The third jhana is characterized by the disappearance. You've heard of the term piti sukha, joy and happiness. Joy disappears, and you actually experience happiness for the first time. And the fourth jhana is actually when even happiness, right, is too rough, it's not still enough, it's not pleasurable enough. And then happiness is let go of, and then you have perfect upekkha, like equanimity. So that's actually the four jhanas. They're characterized by actually increasing letting go. And this actually confirms, right, this actually affirms that in the second jhana, there's no intention, there's no motivation at all, right? So even wholesome motivations will end. So this is just to talk about this. So now actually if we were to apply this to our lives, right? Which of these are right motivation? Right? I need to teach him a lesson. He's not being honest. Right? What's the motivation you have there? Is it that of, non-ill will, non-cruelty, of letting go? What is it that you're holding on to, right, in this particular case? We need to defend the Buddha Dhamma from all these lying SOBs, right? Which you often hear in some AGMs and all that, which I won't name where, huh? Yeah. But you think about it, what's the motivation of this? Is this right motivation? Is this Samma Sankappa? The reality is the Buddha Dhamma doesn't need you to defend. The moment that you allow your mind to be default, right, with those unwholesome motivations, you have not defended the Buddha Dhamma at all. Right? We need to grow Buddhism and not let the Buddha Dhamma decline against the growth of other religions. This is my favorite. Because I hear this very often. Is that important? I'm not sure. What are we holding on to here? We're holding on, right, as Ajahn Brahmali said in a recent talk, we're holding on to the identity of us being Buddhists. But in reality, if you look at what the Dhamma is saying, they're actually not they're actually not advocating for you to hold on to this, I am a Buddhist. The Buddha is advocating for you to practice the principles that he laid out, Dhamma and the Vinaya. So you have to practice that, right? And that extends to motivation, right motivation. So are you letting go? Are you being kind? Are you being gentle? Or are you grasping? No, this is my view. This is right. No, we need to teach the guy a lesson. We need to be strong. We need to be, we need to show that we're growing, right? And this also applies to meditation, right? So I was very intentional with the guided meditation just now when I told you that when your mind wanders off, just let it be. And the reason is because that, let me just show, right, what's the most common meditation instruction. Your mind has wandered off, oh, okay, just bring it back. And what will happen? Your mind will wander again. Oh, never mind, just bring it back. Come back again. Then you start getting angry. My mind is not still. Why is it not still? Right? Be still. And then you start thinking about like what you can do. Let me practice some more. I'll just sit 1 hour every day. Okay, not enough. Let me sit for 2 hours. Right? I'll just try more. I try harder. But what's actually happening, right? Why is it that your mind is not still? It's because you've already injected a strong element of ill will. You have a relationship problem with your own mind. Right? That's why I gave the simile when I was saying about giving the guided meditation of like, imagine that it's a young child, right? And the young child it's the nature of children to run around, right? The young child runs away. You've got an option of either you run after that child, in which case that child will run even further, or you just smile, be kind, be gentle, and just wait. Right? It's like this story that Ajahn Brahm spoke about, right? Of this, apparently it's a Singaporean lady who told him the story, that she said that when she was 5 years old, and she told her mother that, okay, I'm sick of staying in this house, I'm going to leave. So she left her HDB flat, right? And she told her mother, I'm going to go and leave the home. And the mother was very wise. The mother said, okay, if you want to, I'll pack lunch for you. Then the mother packed lunch, packed a bag, gave her a water bottle. It's like, okay, here's some money if you want to travel around. Okay, have a good time, bye. And the lady was telling Ajahn Brahm that when she was like 5 years old, right? So she walked all the way to the end of the corridor in the HDB estate. Then she started missing her mom already. Then she turns back and then went straight back. But that's actually how it is, right? And it's the same thing with our minds. You think that, when your mind goes off, right, and you have this idea, I need it to be still, I need it to be like, tranquil and all that, and can do this by forcing. It doesn't quite work that way. Your mind will actually run away from you, right? But instead, if you just be patient, you be kind, right? Yes, initially it will be a little bit volatile. But what will happen will be similar to what I experienced during that retreat, right? Where the stillness was unlike anything I ever experienced. When you actually do get to that stillness, it will be like nothing you ever experienced before, right? So this applies to your meditation as well. Yeah. I shall sit until I become enlightened, whether my body rots or not, right? Ajahn Brahm has a story about this, about a monk in Wat Pa Nanachat that did this. So apparently he made that vow, the same vow as he read in the Buddha suttas, right? Oh yeah, do the same vow as the Buddha. Then apparently they had to carry him out of his seat and they had to give him a double knee replacement after that. Yeah. And your own practice, right? Even though I'm very tired, I will sit and I will make sure I sit back upright. So all this, if you realize, right, all this motivation, there's a strong element of ill will to yourself involved in this. And you have to be very careful when you use willpower because there's a very strong element of like you scolding yourself. The Buddha described the will, right, as a simile of like a slave mistress. The mistress that tells you always what to do. Go here and do this. Go here and do that. And we are exactly that to our own minds. Right? But is that right motivation? Is that actually the second factor of the Eightfold Path, right? Which is one of the hearts of the Eightfold Path. So I've already mentioned, I won't cover this slide again, but you can see that actually like right endeavour, right? The next thing is actually very, very important. But what exactly is right endeavour? So this one actually is a bit of a bonus, right? Again, this is from Ajahn Brahm's translation. There are 4 aspects of right endeavour, right? You have restraint, abandonment, development, preservation, like what I covered just now. And what's the endeavour of restraint? So when you see something, right, you don't let yourself get sucked in, right? In a way that allows us the arising of unwholesome mental states. A practical example of this is if, say, for example, you're a married man, like I am, ring here, is that when you see a hot chick walking past, right, for example, you don't immediately zoom in on like what is the most attractive part about this person. Actually, you should watch your mind and see where your mind goes to, and then you actually look for something else. And my trick, right, which I think makes a lot of my colleagues very uncomfortable, is I look for the flaws. So what often happens is that I will look for pimples, which is what Ajahn Brahm used to do. But I also look at teeth, because usually there'll be something very unpleasant in the teeth, right? Like a crack here, or like something like discoloration there, or something like that, right? And I think there's a limit to how much I can do this in the workplace, because I think I make my female colleagues very uncomfortable by staring at what they're already like very self-conscious of. But for my own personal mental state, it's great, because the moment you see that, right, the moment there's some inclination that, oh, this is a good-looking person, and then the mind goes towards that direction, and then I realize my mind is going in the direction, then I look at something that balances out. I can then treat that person like a normal person. I can treat that person as like a sister or just a normal person. It's not an object. What happens with sex objects is that you objectify that person. You turn that beautiful aspect, right? That person is no longer a person, it's a cartoon, actually. You're taking out the features, the nicest part, and you're just only looking at that. The same thing applies for anger. What happens when you get angry, right, is that you are drawn into the aspect that pisses you off the most. I was listening to a talk by Ajahn Kemavaro, and he quoted this Russian author called Anton Chekhov, who said apparently that if you want to experience loneliness, get married. You must have had a very unhappy marriage, right? Yeah. So, but in that case, right, you think about like all the people that you live with, right, whether you're married or not. Why is it that they piss you off so much? Why do you get angry? And observe your mind, right? Ask yourself, like, what are you looking for? Oftentimes, you go straight and you zoom into what they have done wrong, or what they are weak at. So for example, what example can I give from my personal life that wouldn't piss off my wife? Yeah. So if I were to give an example of so for example, right, I have this habit of treating, people have wardrobes. I have a floordrobe. I basically just dump my clothes on the floor after I'm done like wearing them. And that annoys my wife to no end, right? And similarly, I'm sure that many of us have like all these flaws, right? But if you think about what's happening is that you're zooming in on like what's gone wrong, right? If you look, actually, you take a step back and you actually force yourself to see and appreciate actually what are the things that this person has done right. What have they done well? Then you realize, again, it's similar to what I shared about the sensual desire thing, but it's the reverse. It causes you to actually reduce your anger by quite a bit. Seeing things in the right way allows you to reduce your anger, right? And this also applies to the workplace. How many times, right, you are pissed off either at your bosses because you think that, they're hopeless, and so on and so forth. But ask yourself the question, right, have you made yourself see the good things of what they have done? Same things with your colleagues, same things with the people under you. We have a tendency to go, oh, this guy is so stupid. And why is he doing this in this way? But ask yourself, are there other traits, right, that this person has done that is good, that you maybe have overlooked? And consciously bring it up. Right? Don't just look only at what's like causing the unwholesome states. Look at your own mental state, look for what is compensating for that. So that's actually restraint. Restraint is not about covering your eyes. It's not about, I don't pretend I don't see. It's not that, right? Endeavour to abandon is the next one, right? So you have motivation. You see that person and it pisses you off, right? You don't maintain it. If seeing, this is what I tell my wife, like, if seeing me drop my clothes on the floor makes you angry, then don't look at it lah, right? Yeah, but it's a bit hard lah because the floor is like so big, right? So inevitably she'll see it, right? Yeah. So same thing, right? When you have this arisen thought, be aware your mental state is no longer pure, right? Then let it go. Right? What can you do to let it go, renounce, bring it to cessation, right? Same thing with aversion, same thing with like harming. For development, what is it that you need to develop? And this actually are the 7 bojangas, the 7 enlightenment factors, right? So this one I think that is quite well known. I'll leave you to go and read. It's the factor of like mindfulness, dharma, investigation of the dharma, energy, rapture, tranquility, stillness, equanimity, and then the effort to maintain. So in this case, right, whatever it is that you have experienced a wholesome mental state, right, what can you keep in your mind? And this is the reason why it's so important, right, to bear in mind the good things that you have done. Right? In the same way that Lady Visakha in the suttas, right, she had actually asked of the Buddha the monopoly, right, to be able to provide all the monks in the Buddha's time all the requisites. And the Buddha asked her, why is the reason that you're asking for this? Right? It sounds very selfish, right? It's like, oh, I give this woman the exclusive right that any monk coming in to spend a rains retreat at Buddha, right, all the requisites will be covered by her. And she told the Buddha this. She said, the reason I'm asking for this is that if I'm allowed this, then what will happen is that every time I see the monks going into the monastery, there will be joy that arises in me because I will reflect that I've done this merit. I've done this merit that any monk that has gone in and out of the rains retreat, right, with the Buddha, right, whether some of these will be enlightened monks, I will have done great merit. And this merit, right, this recollection of the merit will allow me to actually improve my spirituality. It's actually a shortcut for your own meditation, this recollection of like the good things. And this is actually the effort, right, the endeavor to maintain the wholesome mental states. So keep in mind, like, what is it that brings you that kind of like joy. So just a commentary here that actually right endeavor is actually about increasing wholesome mental states and decreasing like unwholesome mental states. And if you notice what has been described earlier, right, there's a strong element of wisdom. It's not just about like, oh, not enough, do more. It's actually do smarter, do it in a wiser way. Right, and how to act on the unwholesome thoughts to actually reduce them. So the cane thing I will actually cover in just a little bit. So this is actually the Chinese translation of Majjhima Nikaya 19, which is called Two Kinds of Thought, Veda Vitakka Sutta, actually. So this is what the Buddha said. When I was not yet awakened, I thought I should divide my thoughts into two kinds. Thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and harming as one kind, and thoughts without sensual desire, ill will, and harming as another kind. If you notice, these are right motivation, right? The right motivation and the wrong motivation. So divide your thoughts into two kinds, right? Practicing like this, I went to stay in a remote and secluded place, practicing diligently with a mind free from negligence. When a thought of sensual desire arose, I at once realized that a thought of sensual desire had arisen. I realized that this is harmful to myself, to others, and both, that this destroys wisdom, causes much trouble, does not lead to nirvana. On realizing that this is harmful to myself and to others, and both, blah, 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 the thought rapidly ceased. When the thought of sensual desire arose, I did not accept it. I abandoned it, discarded it, vomited it out, and so on and so forth, right? It is just as though in the last month of spring, when the fields have already been sown, and there's limited area for cows to graze. A cowherd boy will wield a cane to prevent the cows from straying into others' fields. Why is that? Because the cowherd boy knows that he would certainly be scolded, beaten, and imprisoned for such trespassing. For this reason, the cowherd boy wields a cane to prevent them from straying into the fields. In accordance with what one intends and thinks, the mind takes delight in that. One who often thinks thoughts of sensual desire abandons thoughts without sensual desire. Right? So this actually is right effort, is right endeavor, because you're applying wisdom to actually ask yourself, okay, you're aware that this thought has arisen. Right? You apply wisdom to first go, okay, what are the categories of like motivations, right, or thoughts, right? You divide the two. When it's arisen, right, and you realize that it has arisen, then you apply the endeavor to the four right endeavors, right? You restrain, abandonment, development, persistence, right? To actually let go of that unwholesome thought. So again, apply this to these questions, right? What's your mental state at that point in time? And same thing with your meditation, right? You know, what's your mental state? Oftentimes it's this. And until we become fully enlightened, right, these will always exist in some form or the other. But the important thing is to constantly actually seed these motivations to ourselves in our practice, the letting go, the gentleness, the kindness, right? So I've spoken about like unwholesome thoughts, right? How do you deal with this? Again, I'm going to share another whole bunch of translations from Venerable Analayo. These are almost exactly the same as in the Pali. So this is from the parallel of the Vitakka Santana Sutta, actually, Majjhima Nikaya 20. So if unwholesome thoughts arise, right, then one should instead pay attention to a different sign associated to what is wholesome, so that the evil and unwholesome thoughts no longer arise. And it is just as a carpenter or an apprentice might apply an ink string to a piece of wood and then cut the wood with a sharp edge to make it straight. So it's as though that you got a crooked piece of wood, right? Then you apply a line and you go, okay, actually this is the straight part, and then you cut it to make it straight. The Pali is actually more evocative for this particular example. The Pali actually says that it's as though that you've got a very big pack in a hole, right? And that's actually the unwholesome thought in your mind. Then you use a smaller thought, right, to squeeze it out. It's a smaller wholesome thought, right, to actually squeeze out the unwholesome thought, right? So that's one way. The second way, right, is to actually realize that these are dangerous, right? You realize that, wow, actually these they actually weaken wisdom, right? They don't lead to the ultimate happiness that we know of. And maybe the simile is actually quite evocative. It is just as though a very young and handsome person has just taken a bath, washed, dressed, and is spotlessly clean. Suppose someone were to take a dead snake, dog, or human that's half-eaten and put it around the neck, right? That youth would abhor the filth. So when you have all these unwholesome thoughts in your head, right, it's as though that someone had taken like a dead snake, right, and put it around your neck, right? And I think most people's reaction to the thoughts, right, instead is to take this and go, this is powerful, it's fantastic, it's great, I'm so powerful and I'm angry, right? Which is usually our reaction because we're conditioned to do so. But in reality, you're holding a dead snake up. Just be aware of that, right? So let it go, right? Be aware of the danger of that. Third way is to actually not attend to that thoughts. Don't give it focus, don't give it attention, right? It's just like a clear-sighted person who not wishing to see, so I see Siu Yin, I don't want to see her, then I just look away, for example. Not that I'm just joking, but along that way. So when you've got an unwholesome thought, right, I think that the best simile of that actually is the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was giving a commencement speech, and she said that she was asked the secret to a happy marriage, and she said, in a long and happy marriage, it helps to be a little forgetful sometimes, and it's exactly that. Okay, I should tell my wife this. Okay, I dropped the thing on the floor, right? You don't see lah, right? Yeah, so I do tell her that. Same thing, right? The unwholesome things that happen, just let go. I don't want to see. Just don't pay attention to that. So if all these three things don't work, right, then you actually like still the mind gradually, right? It's just as though a person walks along a path very quickly, you're rushing. Then you ask himself, why am I hurrying? Shouldn't I just walk more slowly? And then you walk more slowly. Then you walk more slowly already. It's like, why am I walking slowly? Shouldn't I just stand still? And then you stand. Then why am I standing? Then you sit. And why am I sitting? Then you lie down. And applying that to your mind, right, when you're in the middle of an unwholesome thought, allows you to slow down, and it allows mindfulness to come in very gradually, right? And the last one, right, is the famous one. With teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the palate, one should use the mind to fix mind. It's like just using two strong men who grab a weak man, take hold of him, and subdue him. It sounds like a bar brawl, right? Yeah, and this is a commentary from Venerable Analayo that I just want to share. This type of approach is often the first method that comes to one's mind when having to deal with unwholesome thoughts. And yet, in both the Pali Nikaya and the Agamas, this is the last resort, right? Emphasize here, it's the last resort. It's actually always like spoken of as the last one. But out of habit, we tend to use this as the first, to use our willpower to subdue. Actually, it doesn't work that way. And this kind of forceful approach is not capable of leading forward to the path of liberation. The point of this method is just only to offer an emergency brake. And it's just as one who keeps engaging the brakes will not advance, so the use of this method on its own will not result in any substantial progress on the path. Right? This is just a point. So summary here, pay attention to something wholesome, contemplate the danger of the unwholesome thoughts, don't attend to them, intentionally slow down your thoughts, and ultimately, if say that your intentions are going to cause you to like slap someone in the face, right, use the strong method to stop yourself from acting on that, right? But just bear in mind that the most effective way is actually to be able to just remove the anger, remove the unwholesome states altogether to begin with. So a summary is right motivation. It's about letting go, being kind, being gentle. As Ajahn Brahm says, make peace, be kind, be gentle. It's not Ajahn Brahm saying that. It's actually the Buddha who said that. Right? Right endeavour is acting in whatever way to achieve the outcome of reduced unwholesome mental states and increased wholesome mental states. So both go hand in hand. Right motivation, right endeavour, they go hand in hand with mindfulness. Mindfulness is actually quite key, but it is not alone and not enough. And lastly, wisdom power. Everything I've spoken about, wisdom, willpower is only the last resort. Right? Instead, apply the lens of wisdom, try and see things in a different way, right? Such that if you see, I think Ajahn Brahm said it best, when you see things in the right way, when you have right view, defilements disappear. That's when you know you've got right view. Yeah. So apply wisdom, not willpower. So I think I've more or less finished my talk. So may you develop the fourth noble truth, fully understand the first noble truth, abandon the second noble truth, and realize the third noble truth in this very life. So, anybody needs a translation? So, fourth noble truth, Eightfold Path, right? May you develop the Eightfold Path. May you fully understand suffering, right? May you abandon the origin of suffering, which is the one thing, and fully realize the cessation of that suffering, the origin of suffering, which is to attain Nibbana. So that's all I have for today's talk. Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So any questions or comments or complaints? Complaints can go to Brother Joe. Yeah.
Thank you, Brother PJ, for a very deep thought on deep interpretation on right motivation and right endeavor. So, brothers and sisters, any questions? Everybody enlightened? If not enlightened, have to ask questions to get enlightened.
So in the Chula Karma Vibhanga Sutta, the Buddha was asked the question of like, what's the karma for wisdom? And he actually said that that is to ask questions. So if you don't ask questions, then you are not seeding the karma for wisdom.
Well, I have a question actually.
Yeah, please.
So about the 6 a.m. Motivation to practice or to meditate, well, wouldn't that be a good motivation also, a good aspiration, you know, to, it's a motivation to something good, something wholesome. It's in fact something that we're trying to develop an arisen wholesome state, for example.
I will answer your question in a slightly different way. Not because I'm a politician, but because I think that this is probably the more effective way. If you think to yourself, right, why is it that some people are able to... So I was reflecting on this same exact point because I recently discovered that there's this lay practitioner in Australia who is a very deep meditator. So apparently in Dhammasara Nunnery, there was one time that they went in the evening to meditate in this stupa. And they went at 7 p.m. with this lay person. He's a lay guy. And after about 2 or 3 hours, most of the bhikkhunis were done with their meditation. He was still in deep state. And he went on in that deep state from in the evening, about 7, 8 o'clock, right? All the way until 4 o'clock in the morning. So he's a very, very, very experienced and deep meditator. And he was asked the question of like, you know, like what was the practice like for you? And he spent 15 years of meditating every day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, right? And he just used that time to work on his defilements and all that. So you're right to say that there is that element of like that right intention there, that right endeavor there. But the one thing that I was reflecting on is that why is it that most people can't? And the reason is because that when people, in this case, right, this guy, right, what happens is that he's got the endeavor to do that, but he's clearly getting some pleasure out of it. His motivation when he sits down is the right one. He's sitting there to let go, be kind, be gentle. And, you know, once you create that habit, right, it becomes very enjoyable. It's like asking me to sit for a spa treatment for 2 hours a day, right? It's like, who wouldn't want to go for that, right? In contrast, for most people, when you tell them, oh, you should sit for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, right? it is as though that you're telling them, I'm going to pull your teeth for 1 hour in the morning, I'm going to pull your teeth for 1 hour in the evening. And what's the difference there? The difference is the motivation is a completely different one. When most people sit, right, actually the motivation is that I need to, okay, I'm going to, there's a lot of conceit, there's a lot of ego. I need to sit, I need to be a good Buddhist practitioner, I need to do all these things. And then there's the element of willpower that comes in. So I think that the best description I had of how to properly practice was Ajahn Kemavaru, right? He recently said in a talk that I listened to, he said, right endeavor means that you do have the will to go to the meditation cushion. But once you sit there, let go. Let go, make peace, be kind, be gentle. If you're nodding off, just be kind to it. If you're sleepy, be kind to it. That's perfectly fine. So it's actually how you actually approach that 6 a.m. thing that is important. Unfortunately, for most of us, I think that we actually use a lot of willpower because of our conditioning, because of school and all that. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much. So I should go into a 6 a.m. spa every morning then. So, brothers and sisters, any other question? We probably have, well, it's almost 12 anyway. Any last question? Nope. Okay, so
okay, thank you.
It
Thank you very much,
seems that,
everyone.
everything is very clear. So
I hope so.
let's say sadhu 3 times to Brother PJ, brothers and sisters. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.